This is part 2 of the radio series. The next item is utilities, which includes the water and electricity bill. This is definitely a variable expense category as the bill fluctuates from month to month. To be on the safe side, I'm going to overestimate my budget and set it at $40 per month, which accounts for approximately 0.67% of my overall expenses. Moving on, we have bank saving in our budget list. Actually, I only save $50 per month, which accounts for about 0.84% of my monthly expenses. 0.84%? I know many of you may be asking, why is this item listed so early? Shouldn't we be saving more than we spend? What about my emergency funds? Let me explain. I'm not a big fan of keeping my money in the bank. Instead, most of my funds are invested in broker platforms like Tiger, Moomoo, and TD Ameritrade. Additionally, I already have my 3-month emergency fund prepared, which is in the form of precious metals like gold and silver. I'll discuss this more in the later part of this video. Personally, I believe the interest rate offered by local banks are still not high enough to exceed my profits I gain from my investment. That's why bank savings, a variable category, is listed as number 6 in my budget. Of course, this is not financial advice, just my own preference. Next on my budget list is dental braces. A little background on this, I started my braces journey in November 2021, and it will take 2 years to complete the whole process. The total cost of the braces is $4,000, of which I paid $2,000 upfront. For the remaining balance, I made monthly receipts to the clinic and pay $100 as an installment. As of this year, I only have $600 left to complete my payment. I divide this by 12, which means I pay roughly $50 per month. This accounts for 0.84% of my monthly expenses, which is about the same amount as my bank savings. This item falls under the fixed expense category as I cannot change the price of the braces. Number 8. Ooh, the number is getting larger now. Is my transportation expenses. As a typical workaholic in Singapore, the two main modes of transportation for me are the MRT and bus. I actually calculated this myself, and it may be different for other people based on where they live. I live quite near to my workplace, and it costs me about $100 in 1.5 months if I'm traveling to work every weekday. Therefore, I divide $100 by 1.5, and my transportation expenses cost me about $66.67 per month, or 1.11% of my monthly budget. Of course, this item falls under the variable expense category as my work is flexible and I can either work from home or in the office if I do not have classes to teach. Moving on to the next item on my list, we have taxes. As a worker in Singapore, it's mandatory for me to pay taxes. But I am actually grateful that Singapore has one of the lowest tax rates in the world. For those who are unfamiliar, we need to file our income tax by the end of April each year. And we can also file for tax relief if we qualify based on certain criteria such as studying, voluntarily contributing to our pension fund, childcare expenses, and so on. One great thing is that I don't have to manually calculate my total tax bill. I simply log into the official government website called IRAS and file for tax relief and payment. The tax calculator then automatically calculates the tax I owe for the year. After a bit of digging, I found that I will owe $1,121.84 in 2023, which means I need to set aside about $93 per month to cover it. This accounts for 1.56% of my monthly expenses and is a fixed expense that I cannot change. We are almost done, guys. Number 10. Insurance. Basically, I bought 2 insurance plans from Prudential for myself, the life plan and hospitalization coverage plan. Choosing an insurance plan is a personal decision, so I'm not here to promote one plan over another. If you want more information, I strongly encourage you to seek advice from an insurance agent. Anyway, let's get back to the budget. I chose the annual payment plan instead of the monthly installment plan because it's slightly cheaper to pay it all at once. The total cost of my insurance annually is about $3,243, which means I need to save $270.25 per month to pay for it. This accounts for 4.52% of my monthly expenses. My insurance policy doesn't change much this year, so I will label it as a fixed expense. Next up, we have the F&B, groceries, and others. I will come back to this shortly after I cover the last item on my budget list. This is because it's a highly volatile expense that depends on my final budget analysis before I can decide on the amount. After reverse engineering my budget, I've placed this item at number 11 in my monthly expenses. Moving on, we have pocket money for family expenses. I strongly believe in giving back to my parents now that I am working. Our parents has loved us unconditionally since the day we were born. So, as filial children, we should at least return the favor by giving them a monthly allowance. The amount to give back to your parents is not fixed and should be discussed openly with them. For me, since my family is in Malaysia, I will send them around 2,000 ringgit per month. Due to the currency fluctuations, this family expense may vary. At the time of recording of this video, it costs $650.60 per month, accounting for approximately 10.88% of my monthly expenses. The next item on the budget list is Central Provident Fund, CPF, which is the Singapore version of a pension fund. This item may be slightly complicated, so follow me closely. For those who are unfamiliar, you only need to contribute to the CPF if you are a PR or a Singaporean. If you have an employment pass or a worker pass, you don't need to contribute to CPF. As I mentioned earlier, I only received my permanent resident or PR status in March of last year. You can find this detail on swingvy.com, links in the description down below. As a first year PR, I had the option to choose whether to contribute fully, which is 20% of my salary, or partially, only 5% of my salary, to CPF. I also had the option to choose whether my employer would contribute fully, which is 17% of my salary, or partially, 4% of my salary, to my CPF. In this case, I chose the second option, where my employer contributes fully and I contribute partially to CPF each month. This means that I have to contribute $5,021 times 5%, which is roughly $253 per month for the first 3 months. Why? Because from April onwards, it will be my second year as a PR contributing to CPF, and I will have to contribute 15% of my salary, which is $5,021 times 15%, or roughly $755 per month to CPF. To get the average monthly contribution to CPF, I have to take the weighted sum of $253 multiplied by 3 plus $755 multiplied by 9, and then divide this sum by 12, which gives us $629.50 each month. But wait, there's more. I also need to include my CPF contribution extracted from my bonus. As I mentioned earlier, my bonus was $11,500 received in January this year. But because January 2023 is still my first year as a PR, I only have to contribute 5% of my bonus to CPF, which is $11,500 times 5% divided by 12, and we get roughly $48.29 per month in CPF contribution. Now, if we sum up all the monthly contribution, $629.50 plus $48.29, we get a total of $677.79 in monthly CPF contribution, which accounts for 11.34% in my monthly expenses. take note that this is just an average amount that I need to contribute monthly. So I would expect to contribute more than this average amount from April onwards. However, if we just follow average value, we will not go wrong in the end. This expense is definitely fixed, so I shall categorize it as a fixed budget. And this concludes part 2 of my video series.